Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to God and Health. Um, Today we will be doing something different. I will be sharing my testimony with you for the very first time. I will be sharing with you how I came to the full knowledge of Christ and how he has been faithful and wonderful in my life. But before we can even do that, I want us to go to the scripture and read some verse that is in accordance with what I will be doing, because everything should lead us back to the scripture. Everything should be in alignment with the word of God. So we will take our Bible and go to Psalms 107 verse 2. It reads as follows: let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he hath redeemed from the hand of the enemy. But before I can start my testimony, I just want to introduce myself and let you guys know who I am. My name is Lindokuhle Buku. I am 21 years old. I am a child of God. I am born again. I am saved by his grace. I am adopted into God's family. How I came to the knowledge of God, or rather, I was born into a single mother because she was doing things single-handedly. My father was not very much in my life, and my mother had me when she was a teen. She was very young when she had me. So yeah, and then that's how I am. So now my story, it starts from when I think I was 4, because when I was 4, that is when I moved to stay with my grandmother from my father's side, whom I call Otabawo. She's not really my father's mother, but she is a grandmother somewhere, you know, those distant. I wouldn't say that we are really much related, but she became a grandmother and played such a vital role in my life. So that's how, and that is when I came to know Christ. I started knowing Christ when I was living with her, because she was a woman of God who loved God so much, even though back then she didn't know him that much. So when I stayed with Utapsi, she was a 12 apostolic. So we were going to the 12 apostolic church, and when I went to stay with her, she was not doing very well. She had just lost her husband, and she was wearing inzila, which is a mourning clothing. We call it inzila in my language. I don't know what it's called in English, which is an all white clothing. And inzila is a mourning clothing. It's an all white clothing, an all black clothing, and an all navy clothing. It all depends, but I think since she was a 12 apostolic, and in the 12 apostolic church you wear an all white clothing, so the church decided to put her in an all white clothing. That is just my assumption. I'm not really sure about that, but that's what she was wearing. And then back then when I moved there, she was not doing very well in her health. It was not really good. She had just found out that she has high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and all of that stuff you can think of. So it was very, very hard on her, but living with her was very, very nice, because when I lived with her, she introduced me to Christ. Even though we were going to an apostolic church, we knew that we had to pray every day. We would pray at night, and I don't remember much about reading the Bible, but I think maybe we would read. I don't really recall, but I knew about prayer. It was a showcase, so we would pray, and I adapted that to that lifestyle. As young as I was, when she was sick, that's what she would tell me. When she was sick, I would always tell her, Dapsy, please let us pray, let us wake up and pray. And we would pray, and she would tell me that the pain had gone away. I don't know if it was a way of comforting me as a young child, or it really happened, but I believe that it really happened, because God can hear the prayers of the young ones. If you remember the story of, it's Hakai, I'm not sure, Raka, if you remember that story of that woman, when there was no water and she tried to pray, but when his son cried out, that is when the Lord answered. So the Lord is also closer to the children. So I'm sorry if you hear any background noises. There are people right now moving around here in the house, and I don't know if this mic will catch it. So that is how it all happened. That is how I started knowing Christ, but my memory goes back as to the age of 7, 8, 9. I think that is when I had a full knowledge of Christ, because that is when I can recall myself praying for certain things and seeing them manifesting in my life in the near future. So back then we would go and visit Epizana. It is where Dapsi's family resided, so we would go and visit there. And when we were visiting there would be children, the other family members would come and visit. And when they are visiting, those kids were going to a Model C school or a high class school, and they were speaking in English. And back then I was going to a rural school, a government school, whereby the teachers were not very influential and were not very eloquent in English. They couldn't speak it properly, but I couldn't understand most of the things they were saying. They would communicate in English, and it would be very difficult for me to understand. So this is what also inspired my prayer, because I would feel so left out and think that maybe they are talking about me. I'm not saying that it was wrong, because around where they were staying, it was suburbs, so they were going to white school. They were staying in the suburb area, so for them it was easier to communicate and speak in English, because that is their influence. That was the community they were staying in, so they were influenced by that culture and that community. So if you understand, but I'm not saying that they did not anything, because they would try maybe sometimes to include me, but most of the time they would be communicating in English, and it would be very, very difficult. Sometimes you'll hear them laughing and you feel left out, and that's what you are thinking. So I would make prayers like, God, please, can you make white people fall from an aeroplane, and come and teach us in these rural areas? So that was my prayer. That was my wish. And it's the faith that I had, because every day I would wake up thinking that when I go to school, that is what would happen, but it wouldn't happen. That's just the mind of a child hoping for the impossible, but it's not impossible with God. So because what is impossible with man, with God is possible. So it was not impossible with God. So those were the kind of prayers that I would make as a little child. And then time went on, and I really had a low self-esteem when growing up, because I was a slender, very, very slim person, and I had a small head, and I didn't have very much hair. The texture of my hair was not very thick, so I had very few hair, where sometimes you could be able, if I'm in the back, because it was worse on my sides and on the back, where it was easier. It was a see-through hair, you could see my scalp and stuff, but here it was not very much of a struggle. So everywhere I went, people would note that. Everywhere I went, people would be telling me that, would be saying that, and I became so self-conscious, and I started hating myself. They would be saying, you have a small head, and so on and so forth. And I started noting that, and it made me, to hate myself. Whenever I would look in the mirror, I would see this ugly person, and that's when my low self-esteem started, because every time when I would look in the mirror, that is when I would see this ugly being, which is fine, no problem. So now, growing up, that is the mentality that I had, and I was very sharp when growing up. I was very sharp. In my language, it's called ukundweba. I was very smart, and people loved to call me and refer to me and say that I am, the way I behave is like a mouse. I'm so sharp and all. I haven't looked up the meaning of that. I don't know what they meant, but that's what they used to call me, a mouse, which is fine. I never really loved that name, but you get to accept those nicknames. So I was a very smart kid. Even at school, I was very smart. I was always in the top 5 and all of that, because that's the grace that I got from God. So now, when I was growing up, those were the kinds of prayers that I would make. And The way I was so smart back then, I was so smart, I was so bold. Not that I'm boasting, I was so smart, I was so bold. And there was an apostolic faith mission church that was around where we stayed, and we went to visit that church. And when we would visit, because we stopped, when we would go to Pisana, we stopped, we went and spent time at Pisana, and I started at another school in Pisana, where Daps's family was staying, and I ended up having to study there. And then we changed churches when we went to that church where my family at Bizana was attending to. So I'm not really sure if I want to say its name, because I'm not really sure if it's a non-denominational church or it falls under Protestant or Charismatic church. I'm not really sure. But we were attending that church. So now we were no longer the apostolic. And when we went back to Flagstaff, because the church was in Bizana, when we went back to Flagstaff, it was a bit difficult, because now we couldn't find any other church, and we couldn't travel from Flagstaff to Bizana, because it was costly. So we had to attend the apostolic faith mission, and we would go there. And they realized that I have such a special skill, or rather, I'm such a smart kid, and I am so bold, and I am able to answer, I am able to recite verses. And they were interested, and they wanted me, because there would be those sketches that they had as on Passover, where they would play Goliath and do those sketches. And we would go, all the apostolic faith mission churches would meet up, and there would be those competitions, and we would have to recite verses. And I always won, because I would recite Psalm 23, and when reciting Psalm 23, I would make sure that they always win. I always came out as number one, and I would win packages. We always won in that part, because I was so bold, I was so loud, I did not stutter, I would be on point saying all those things. So that is one of the graces that God also gave me. So now that's fine. So we had to move back to Epizana, and when we went to Epizana, we were attending the church that I was telling you about. And then the rule where we were staying was that everybody has to go to church on Sunday. There's nobody who will be left at home. So I went to that church. I really enjoyed it. I don't want to lie, it was nice and stuff. So now I had to move around 2015. I had to move to my mother's side, and because they had relocated to a new place, and my grandmother wanted all her grandchildren to be in the same place and stuff, so I had to move and stay on my mother's side. And when I got there, they were not going to church on a Sunday, they were going to a Saturday church. They were Sabbath keepers, or rather they are Sabbath keepers. And so now, coming from a Sunday church, having the doctrines and the teachings and all of that, so it was very difficult for me, because I couldn't understand why they would have to go to church on a Saturday when they are supposed to go to church on a Sunday. And remember, when I went to school, I am a Gen Z generation. So as Gen Z generation, we are growing up in a world where technology is a thing, where things are starting to change. We do not know much about all the things. We grew up when things were starting to change. So when we were in school, they would teach us that Monday you go to school, Tuesday we go to school, Wednesday we go to school, Thursday and on so forth. Saturday we rest, and Sunday on church. So I knew that Sunday is the seventh day of the week. And I remember, even when we were staying back in Flagstaff, there was a Sabbath church here next to us, Seventh-day Adventist church next to us. So now, with that church being there, I still couldn't understand. They were so sweet, they were so nice, but we didn't go there, and I didn't understand why they went there, because growing up I knew that Sunday is the true day to worship. Sunday is the day of the Lord and all of that. So now it was very difficult to understand. It was very, very difficult. So, which is fine. So now they tried to explain it to me, they tried to teach me, but I couldn't understand. I think the Lord made me not understand so that He could teach me Himself and teach me a whole lot of things, which is fine. I still attended that church without understanding. So now I had to move to Pietermaritzburg. Remember the prayers that I was making when I was still young, asking the Lord to help me to go to a high school, to go to a school whereby I will be taught in English. I will speak English and I will have to understand English. So in grade 7, I had to I went to Pietermaritzburg and attended a school there. I think I spent about 6 years in Pietermaritzburg, studying there, doing all of that. So I moved to Pietermaritzburg and I was attending to that school. And when we were staying there, I was staying with my 2 aunts, which I'm not sure if I will mention their names. They will be comfortable with me mentioning their names. So I will say my older aunt and my younger aunt were around the same age group. My older aunt is 5 years older than me, and my younger aunt, we are 8 months apart. I am 8 months older than her. So we were staying together there at Pietermaritzburg, and my older aunt was responsible for us. She was since she was older than us, and we're staying all together, and we're so well behaved. We'd go to church every Saturday. We'd attend. If we didn't go, she would ask us why. She was so matured, and everything went well. So now because she was way older than us, like 5 years older than us, and I was in grade 7. When I was in grade 7, she was doing grade 11. When I was doing grade 8, she was doing grade 12. When I went to grade 9, she had moved and went to pursue a higher education. So now when I was doing grade 9, I was 14, and my younger aunt was 13 at that time. So we went to find a place of our own, and from that place we moved and went to stay at a flat. Before we were moving, we stayed on that place where we found a boarding house of our own, and there we had friends who were staying with, and those friends were smoking weed, and we would accompany them when they would go to their merchant, and they would smoke with their merchant and stuff, which is fine, no problem. But then now I was miss two good issues, because then I was so judgmental. I would say I don't understand why they are smoking. I do not understand why they are drinking, they are doing all of that stuff. And I'm warning you, don't ever do that, but just pray for the grace of God. Always pray that God delivers you from certain things. Do not ever see yourself better than that. Do not ever say that. Never say ever. So I would say I would never do that. So now, since I was judging them, we would accompany them to that, and we would also smoke, but we didn't really smoke. But when we were staying there, when they were passing the joints, there were people who stay in here in South Africa, they will understand, but I don't know about other countries. But they would pass, it would go in circles, and then when I'm passing to others, I would take a small puff and pass. But I didn't know how to smoke back then, so they usually call it a wasted puff if you don't if it did not kick and you did not do it the right way. So I was sober back then. And then there was one time when they had made a very big joint, and we were just accompanying them to a certain place, and we just wanted to try it out. And then they taught us how to do it. You have to take a puff and let it come into your esophagus and hold it in for a few seconds, and then after that you have to let it out. And because it was our first time, it was very difficult and we're inexperienced. We coughed, and I think I took 3 puffs and we coughed, and it was very difficult. And then the way I felt after that, I thought I was gonna die. My saliva was very dry, my mouth was very dry. There was no saliva, and I thought I'm gonna die. Every time I would spit, it would be a small white spit, and I thought I was gonna die. I couldn't stop laughing. It felt like everything was this high when I'm trying to take a step and all. So it was not a very nice experience for my first time. It was very bad. And I think I did it maybe twice, and I was like, no, I don't want it. And then 2018, I found another group of friends. It was very nice having them. um yeah, they were nice. I think those are the group of friends that I will always appreciate. Those friends, like, they hold a special place in my heart, and they will always hold a special place in my heart. And if they are watching this, they will know some themselves. My 2018 friends, they would, excuse me, they would know themselves. And I just want to say I appreciate you all, and you will always have a special place in my heart. So yeah, and I think that is when I tried alcohol. I think, mm-mm, that's not when. Then we moved to the flat, and we moved to the flat. And as we moved to the flat, that is when we were still 14 and 13. And when we were staying there, the manager of those flats was keeping an eye on us, because my grandmother made sure that everywhere we go, and my mother, everywhere we go and everywhere we stayed, we were safe and secure. And she would always talk with the manager and see if we are behaving, we are doing well and stuff. So because we're bored and we're children, I remember there was one time, so we were staying there, and we would, because I had just lost my phone and we only had one phone and we were bored, we would go and watch movies. There was this certain sister that we loved to go to and watch movies there, and we would enjoy. We had a relationship with her. She was like an older sister. We would talk to her. She would share things with us. She trusted us. She would share things with us and stuff and all, and we would keep her company and all. And then I think she was away for some time because we couldn't watch anything. There were these guys who were just moving in a flat, and then we were so innocent. We didn't know much about danger, but we were so innocent. I think crime, rape, and all was not as much popular as it is now, where everyone is aware. Back then, it was not this much. Back then, it was when things were better and stuff. So we moved there. We went to those guys' place, and when we went there, they were watching pornography. Oh, we were watching movies, and in the midst of watching movies, they all of a sudden changed the movies and made us and put pornography in. And then that is when we watched it, and those guys were like in varsity and some were working. I think there were 10 plus minus, I don't really remember. And this is my greatest testimony, because looking back and seeing how things are going now, anything could have happened in that place. Anything could have happened. And this testimony, the Lord reminded me of this now that I got to know him. And I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful, because you can understand pornography, what pornography is, and all of that stuff. So after that, I got intrigued and all of that, and I think I didn't watch it, but I watched it. Back then there would be groups, there would be people who would be adding you groups. I think there was a group of pornography whereby people would add you in and they would send it, and I also got introduced to that and would watch it and all of that stuff. But God being so faithful, I did watch pornography, and I did watch, and it can destroy one's mind. So when you are a parent, it is very important for you to make sure that you check your child's phone, keep track of it, and see and educate them and teach them about things at a younger age, so that they may have an understanding and know what to do and what not to do. And when they do those certain things, they do them with a full knowledge. So for me, nobody had ever told me about it. So I discovered it and stuff. So I would watch it, but then God is a faithful God. He's a mighty God. Here I am today. So now I fast forward. So I went, and then now after that, I met my grade 10 friends, which were from my boarding house. My 2018 friends from my boarding house, those were one of the greatest friends I have ever had, that I truly appreciate, that I will forever appreciate, those that will always have a special place in my heart, because our friendship was not just friendship, but it was a very crucial friendship in my life, and I really needed them at that time, at that point. Even though now we do not keep much contact, we didn't end on a bad note, but they were such great friends for me, and I really enjoyed spending time with them. So yep, now fast forward to when I was in grade 11. That is when I went back to smoking again, when I was smoking so very hard. I think how it started was when we were moving away from the flat that we had been staying in, a second flat. Yeah, I've been to many places in Pietermaritzburg. I've stayed in many places. We are coming from a certain flat, and we went to stay to another boarding house that we had just found. So as we are starting there, we just wanted to experiment and just wanted to smoke. So we went we wanted to find a merchant, and we found a merchant. I think it was Jake or Jack, I don't remember his name. So we would buy there what Jake's. Yeah, excuse me, he was Jake's. We went to buy there, and we found someone who would roll. We didn't know how to roll it. We asked someone, and they just tried to do a joint, but it was not the most perfect one, and we smoked. And then they were interested in joining us and stuff, and then that is when we started smoking, and we smoke every day. We're a circle of smoking, in a circle. If one of us received money, we would go to buy that and also buy some food and share, all of us sharing and doing all of that. So that is how it went. And also in grade 11, that is how in grade 12 I was still smoking, and I thought that I will never stop smoking. I thought that I will never ever stop smoking weed. I thought that I will be that grandmother who smokes. I never saw myself stopping, because I thought it was one of the coolest things ever. But by God's grace, I was delivered. When it comes to alcohol, I wasn't really much interested in alcohol, but I did drink a few times, but it was not something that I was interested in. It was not something that intrigued me. It was not something that I really loved, because I never loved the taste of it. I did drink a few times, but I never really loved the taste of it. I would drink here and there, but not all the time. But now when I was staying in Pietermaritzburg, I would have times whereby I wanted, I would feel empty. I would feel like God is far away from me. I would feel empty inside. And there is a song that kept me going, which is What a Friend We Have in Jesus. What a Friend We Have in Jesus. Um, what a friend we have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our griefs and pain. It says, what a friend we have in Jesus. All our griefs and pain to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. So that song would give me so much comfort, and I would cry, and I would tell God all about it, and I would find comfort in the Lord. And then after that, there would be um days whereby I would sing. There's a song by Usipo that would say Ndinguthandiwe. It says that I'm a loved one, I have been given grace, I have been given mercy. And it talks about how God took us from rags and brought us to a place where we are. So that is also one of the songs that kept me going. It brought all back all the memories. It reminded me of where I came from, who I was, where I lived, where God took me from, and where He put me, and all of that stuff. So it was very nice. When I grew up in such a loving family and stuff. So this is part one. There will be part two where I share how I came to the full knowledge of God and how I fully surrendered my life to God. Here I'm talking about how I was lost, and also I will go back there. Here there is the full knowledge of God, because God is so wonderful and He's so mighty, He's so powerful, and He delivered me from a whole lot of things. And also, before I forgot, I almost became a new ager, but I will talk about it in part two. I will talk about new age and all of that stuff. Be on the watch out. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed, and I hope that this testimony was so powerful that it will encourage you to give your life to Christ. Will encourage you to forfeit the worldly ways and surrender to God, and stock up your your wealth in heaven, where no dust nor no moth come in, where no thief come in and steal your wealth. It is safe and secure. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until the second part.